Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf. Let me introduce you to pour over brewing for tea. So we know about pour over coffees, where you are pouring through a V60, through a paper filter, and overall, it's obviously a very complicated and complex discussion, but overall what you're doing is you're increasing the clarity in the cup in terms of the aromatic profile of the coffee. So you're increasing the more tea-like quality of the coffee. You're increasing more expression of those aromatics, the bright aromatics, and you are developing a very clear, clean cup. Plus, you have a lot of control in terms of the pour speed, the agitation, etc., etc. So you have a lot of control, attention, and you're creating a very aromatic, clean cup of coffee. As I said, it's much more deep than that, but let's just go with that as an overall expression of what pour over coffee is. So I've been experimenting with pour over tea for many, many years through V60s, and it's been hit and miss. I haven't really found that it's been worth singing about to you guys out there. So I haven't really talked about it, but you can play with it. Oftentimes what you'll do is you'll take a more ground tea, you put it in the V60 with the filter, and you can get some good results. But as I said, it's not something that I really pursued that much because I never really found that it was really producing cups that were very, very different. However, when I was in China last year, in Sichuan, I saw a master of tea in Sichuan, a real venerated master of tea, and he was doing pour over black tea using filters like this, like a filter. And I was amazed by this technique and also amazed by the results. I really, really loved it. I'll show you a clip of the video so you can see him doing it. So since coming back from China, on and off, I've been playing with this idea of brewing pour over, but not in a V60, not with the paper filter, but just in a strainer like this. And I've been getting some amazing results. So I think it's finally worth releasing this video. And I'll say from the outset that this is sort of the first salvo into pour over tea. I'm sure that I'm going to learn more. I'm sure that you're going to learn more and feedback your own experiments. So let's do this together. Let's understand this together because it is a very new style of brewing. It's not something which is done in China. I've never seen it before, maybe once before, possibly, but I sort of ignored it. It's very, very uncommon that you would see this anywhere. And so it's kind of an experimental new technique, which is always exciting, right? So we're all experimenting together to understand and dial in how to pour over brew tea. Let me show you how it's done. So the first thing you need to do, you really need a gooseneck kettle because you definitely need the pour speed of the water to be slow. If you're having something with a short spout and you can't control the pour speed, you're never going to be able to get good extractions. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing you need is some sort of sieve, filter, strainer, however you want to call it. You can get these basket brewers, we sell them. They're good, but what I found is that when the size of the circumference, or the diameter, I should say, of this, same thing, circumference and diameter related, my maths is coming back, but that if this is too big, that you are not going to get rich enough extractions. And as you'll see, the challenge in pour over brewing, as you can imagine if you are looking at this with quizzical eyes, is that you want to get a rich enough extraction. And because the water is literally just flowing through the leaves, you want to make sure that you maximize the control that you have over richness. So if you are having something like this, which can work, it does work, you're going to have to put quite a lot of leaf in order for it to filter through enough leaf, in order for you to get enough of an extraction. So my preference is the simple, so dirt cheap, right? Simple strainer like this that we sell, that has a very fine mesh filter in it. So it's going to catch like any tea dust. And this is great because it has more of that conical shape. So you can put less leaves in, but it will still create a more of a pile of leaf. And also as you're pouring in, it will just filter, it'll concentrate down similar to a V60 and filter through more of the leaf that was filtered before. And as you'll see, a lot of what we're going to be talking about here is how you're fractioning the extraction because, well, we'll get into it. But just so you know, this sort of funnel shaped, I think, is better. And I've got another one here. You can see this one here. The difference is you can see the holes on here of the strainer are a little bit bigger. This is very fine mesh. Now, that's going to control the speed at which the water leaves the filter and goes into your pitcher or gongdao bei. And again, faster is going to mean that you are going to have a different extraction. It's going to be slightly less strong, but you can experiment with different filter sizes. I found that both these work depending upon the tea type. And we'll talk about the tea types that I think this is suitable for. We'll talk about everything in this video. But as I said, it's going to be an introduction. I'm sure that there's going to be revisions in the future. Let's show you how it's done. But first, before we do that, let's brew the more conventional style. And it's funny that we're saying that because obviously we're talking about Gong Fu style brewing, which is hardly conventional in the West, but is our conventional way of brewing. So what I've got here, let me just heat the water up, is the same amount of black tea here as in here. So what I recommend that you do is you use the same proportions as Gong Fu brewing. Obviously, however, you have, and same temperature. So same proportions, same leaf to water ratio, same water temperature. That's what I found. You don't increase the temperature because you're brewing pour over. I don't think that that works. Again, you can experiment. One thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is making sure, because you're pouring into a gongdao bei, it's very hard for you to know how much water you're pouring into. So a scale is useful. Now, I would say a scale is useful at the beginning once you're starting this process, so you understand and you can do the comparisons against Gong Fu brewing. But once you've kind of gotten used to brewing in this way, you can discard the scale and just brew in this way. You don't have to be as pernickety maybe as a pour over coffee. It depends on how accurate you want to be. One of the advantages, so we're going to talk about the disadvantages and advantages of both techniques, or the differences, because they're more differences than advantages, disadvantages. But one of the differences is obviously when you have a pour over like this, you can just keep pouring water. So you can actually brew more tea than you would if you brewed here in the Gong Fu setup. So that's a difference, but again, you're going to have to be very attentive to working on how you can get the best extractions. And that is really the key here, is learning how to control the water flow, the amount of the shape of the filter, and the amount of water you pour through. And crucially, I found the positions and how you pour the water make a big difference to the final result. But I am getting ahead of myself as usual. So let's go into a traditional Gong Fu style brewing of this tea. I have here Bailu Gold, one of my favorite black teas from Sichuan, in homage to the Sichuan master that sort of spurned this whole journey. I'm not going to do a full tasting of this tea. If you want to check out this tea, you can. But I will say, ooh, it's amazing. Toffee, cocoa, rose, lychee, beautiful. So now I'm going to give it a quick rinse as usual, and I'm going to pour on the rim because I don't want to hit those leaves directly. And if you've watched that video that I did about pouring styles of water, I'll stick a link in the description, then you'll know that the way that you pour the water is hugely influential as to the effect of, or the taste of your extraction, and even more so when you're doing pour over, at least as equivalent. Let's smell this wet leaf. Bursting, getting a little bit of sort of Nutella on slightly charred toast. Lots of rose, lychee syrup, some leathers. This is an aged one. This is from 2021. I like to age my black teas a bit. it just happens naturally because I've got so many in my cupboard, but you can smell the age on it. Okay, so now I'm going to be a little bit more particular than I normally am because I want to try to make this a fair comparison. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually measure how much water I'm pouring into here. So again, I'm rim brewing like that, and that's 88, it was 88 grams of water. So when I do the pour over, I'm going to do 88 grams as well, just so that we're going to compare extractions that are similar. Now, normally I'd brew this for about 20 seconds. So I did set a timer just because I figure I might as well do it properly. And that is now 20 seconds. There you go. Get all of the drops out. Okay, now I'm not going to taste this now. I'm going to go straight to the pour over because I know that you're all raring to see how to use this technique, and it's really not that complicated, but here you go. So we're going to zero this. We're going to put this on top and this on top. And now what I like to do is I like to still give it a very small rinse for two reasons. The first reason is I want to smell those wet leaves. That's just, I love the smell of the wet leaf. Now what you can do if you wanted, which isn't really the same thing, you can pour hot water into your Gong Bei, put this over the top, and then you can smell like this. And you do get some of the nose dry leaf, but not much. So one of the disadvantages of this method is you're not going to have the smell of leaf in a hot gaiwan, all right, or a hot pot. Okay, so that is a disadvantage. But you can get a little bit, but it's not much. What I'll do is I'm just going to pour over some of that water, just a tiny bit. And as I said, you could do it here, but since there was water already in this Gong Bei, I figured I'd use that water. So now you can smell, and you're getting a lot. I would say not as extreme as in a wide, bold gaiwan, similar to maybe how you would smell it if you were smelling in like a small, in a pot with a small aperture opening. But exactly the same aroma, beautiful. Right, now let's zero this again. So it was 88. Now, this is where it's very personal, okay? But I like, for my first extraction, to cover the leaves and use a zigzag method. So if you've seen the video, you'll know. Zigzag method is where you're just basically covering the leaves in a zigzag fashion. And you want to go as slow as you can. All right, so I'm going to go very slowly. As slow as I can. And this is where you really want to have a very good gooseneck kettle that is very slow pouring. So first infusion, I like to go all over. Now, the master in Sichuan did not do that. He just went into one area, and there are differences, there are advantages and disadvantages. Well, there are differences again. I shouldn't say advantages and disadvantages. Now, put this aside. Now, it's useful if you have something like this, a holder. If not, you can just put it on a cup like this. But I have a little holder because I've got so much TEAWARE around me. Right, so let's pour these into here. And we'll talk about the differences in terms of pouring position, etc. Let's just look at the color difference between the Gong Fu extraction and the pour over, and as you'd expect, the pour over is lighter. Okay, let's taste the Gong Fu. Lovely balance. Got the aromatics, got the cocoa, got the rose, got some great texture, thick, got some bite to it, not too much, a little bit of astringency, leading to that very, very vaporous, rosy, chocolatey rosy finish. Great. Now let's taste the difference that the pour over made. It sounds weird to say, but clarity is the first thing that comes to mind. It's singing with clarity. It's very clean and clear, both in terms of aromatic expression, but also in terms of mouthfeel. So it's very clean, it's very soft, it's very sweet, it's very high aromatics. I'm getting more of the rose, I'm getting more of the lychee. It's, I would say, a sweeter brew. If you tasted these two together, you would think they were slightly different teas, and you would say this one is a lighter, smoother, sweeter tea. This one is a bolder, richer tea. None of this should come as a surprise because you can see how they were brewed differently. More toffee, more cocoa, more brightness just in general, more airiness, more lightness, more, interestingly, as I said before, more sweetness. Like it's almost like you're picking up the perfumed notes of the tea more. So let's quickly go through a very basic general overview of the things that I think are happening here. Obviously, when you're brewing in this style, the Gong Fu style, there's going to be more extraction, so you're getting a stronger brew. Also, you're going to get a more balanced brew because you're getting the aromatics, which generally extract quicker and are more on the surface of the leaf because the leaf is rolled afterwards. So all of the aromatics are drawn to the surface and they sort of tend to be extracted earlier because they're on the outside of the leaf. But you're also, because you're brewing in a more immersion style, you are getting more extraction from the interior of the leaf as well. And that's going to contribute to texture. It's going to contribute to physicality. It's going to contribute to more of the leaf material taste. And that's going to bring out more of the sort of woodsier notes, the more foresty notes, the more bassy, mid-tone and bassier notes, the more leathers, those kinds of notes. You're also going to get, though, more astringency and a possibility of more bitterness. None here, but obviously depending on which tea you use. So with the Gong Fu style, you're increasing strength, richness, balance in terms of you're getting the combination of the aromatics combined with the inner leaf material more. Someone's at my door. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, with the Gong Fu, it's going to be stronger, richer, more balanced because you're getting the combination of the more aromatics, but with some inner leaf material. You're going to get more physicality. You're going to get more physicality in terms of the actual texture in the mouth, but also physicality in terms of the finish. You're going to get more astringency. You're going to get potentially more bitterness. And you're going to get that more complete expression of the tea. With the pour over, and we're going to do another round of this tea so we can compare it. It's still physical, it's still texture, but the texture is a different kind of texture. It's now you've just accentuated the softness of the tea. You've accentuated the sweetness of the tea. It is less intense in terms of volume of flavor, but the flavor profile is amazing because it is super aromatic. It's super bright. It almost is reminiscent of like an extraction, like a perfumed extraction of the tea. Very, very bright, very, very sweet, very, very soft, zero astringency, zero bitterness. So you can start to understand like the differences. Now, as you brew into this pour over, which we will, you're gonna start to get more of the inner leaf material extracted. And so in essence, what you are doing with this style of brewing is a sort of fractioning of the tea. What I mean by that is you're almost getting the extraction in parts. So you may not have as a complete balance of tea as brewing in this style, in extracting more at the same time, But what you're doing is you are really getting to see how the leaf expresses itself as it extracts. And depending on how you pour, you can get different results. So what the master in Sichuan did is he brewed in one place. Now, why was he doing that? He was doing that because what he's doing is getting a more complete extraction of a certain set of leaves. Because by pouring in the same place, what you're doing is you're extracting the aromatics, but also you're extracting some of the inner leaf material because there's more time in one brewing over one leaf. And so you can experiment with that. And I do. Sometimes I prefer doing it that way. Sometimes I prefer doing it the way I did it. The reason I did the zigzag method now is because I wanted to accentuate the most extreme effects of this pour over, which is let's get a fractioning of the more aromatic profiles extracted. Now what I'm going to do is use his style, which is just pouring, and note what I do here. He pours in one area, or he poured in one area, and before it finished, before he reached the end of when he was going to stop pouring, he then went into the center and went higher to just sort of extract more in the middle. Now, what I think, and I watched him do it, what he did then was he clockwise and he brewed in sections, but always went back to the middle. So he was always sort of using the middle part as his sort of, how to describe it, as an area of leaf that evens out the brew. It's always going to get some of that inner leaf material extracted from that, and you're sort of picking up more aromatics from the more unbrewed area. It sounds crazy. I get it. I know a lot of people are going, nah, mate, what are you talking about? But like all things in tea, until you try it, don't be a naysayer, because it is amazing, these details. So what I'm going to do is, I hope you can see it, I'm going to pour in one area now. And again, I'm going to try and do about 88. So I'm going to pour in one area. And when I get to about 60 grams, I'm going to go and do what that master did, which is go into the middle and go a bit higher. So we're hitting 60 now. So higher like this. There you go. All right, slightly over 90 grams, 2 grams over. Right. Now, let me pour this away. I can taste the difference that this kind of extraction made. And you can see the color of the liquor is very, very rich. Surprising. I would imagine a lot of people thought, wow, you're getting that color out of just a pour over where it's not sitting in the water. Cheers, everybody. Amazing brew. I mean, and I don't think I could ever get that brew by brewing Gong Fu style. I'm going to try. This is now a challenge for me. So I'm going to do a rim brew on here, and I'm going to see if I can, with the same amount of water, same amount of leaf, get a similar extraction, and I will tell you why I'm so amazed by this extraction. People, I'm telling you, this is something that is going to start to become obsessive with me. Right. So a relatively short extraction, shorter than my previous extraction, right? I know I'm mixing cups, but let's go. So here we go. This is the pour over. This is the Gong Fu. Let's see if the color is around the same. Yeah, there or thereabouts. This looks noticeably thicker, right? Compared to this one. Okay, here we go. This is better. Why is it better? It's just clearer. It's just clarity. It's like I've like turned on the high definition. It's like boom. It's just clearer. All the aromatics are the same in these. However, this one here, I'm noting more of the, let me just show you. Don't have another cup, but I'll show you in here. I'm noting more of that stewed leaf taste that is inevitable when you are brewing. Now, of course, when you're pouring out Gong Fu style, you try and get as many drops out as you can, but inevitably there's going to be some water sitting in here. And that starts to develop a slightly oxidized, slightly stewed taste. And this, however, okay, I should make sure I put this on the holder. And it's starting to make me want to maybe source some better filters and holders. But I mean, it's just incredibly, look, okay, it's not incredibly different, but the difference is very noticeable. It's a clarity, a singing quality to it that, and the balance is very similar. So because I brewed in this way, where I was pouring in one area, I'm really getting more of the texture and more of the physicality. Still not the same level as the Gong Fu style brewed one. So it's still got less physicality than this one, but some people might prefer that. It's a matter of taste. Do you prefer it to have more physicality, or do you prefer a softer, more gentle tea in the mouth? Toffee, cocoa, woods, delicious, physical dryness, not too much, but there, releasing to vapor, beautiful. Similar profile, but less heavy on the woods, less heavy on the inner leaf material, more like the smell of toffee and the smell of the roses and the lychee, and a more juicy finish, less like dry to vaporous. Very, very noticeable difference. All right, I'm going to do one more example with green tea. And then we're going to talk about the different types of tea that I think this suits. And we can sort of try to wrap things up a little bit as my first attempt to explain this brewing style. So I am going to take my standard, the Mayleaf standard brewer, strainer, I should say. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and heat this up and see if that makes any difference. Because the one thing that you are missing here is that dry leaf smell. Probably overdid it in terms of the amount of leaf. This is a fresh Longjing that just came in. Right, let's see. Yep, it helped. It definitely helped. So if you warm up your strainer, we're learning here. If you warm up your strainer, it definitely does improve the yeah, pretty good, actually. So warm your strainer up. One of the great things about this style of brewing is look how simple it is, right? That's my setup. You know, don't have a brewing vessel. Kind of crazy. All right, I'm gonna pour water in here, clean this out, check the temperature. Perfect. Ooh, it's 79. Let me just bump it up a little bit. So it's like 80, 83. And we're gonna brew this green tea. And we're gonna see how it expresses itself in a pour over. I'm not gonna compare it to Gong Fu. You can do those experiments yourself, but I just wanna show you the different techniques. And one of the things you notice is that with this style of brewing, it requires even more focus and concentration during the pouring phase. It's impossible for you to get a forgotten brew, like one of those, oh, too hot. One of those issues with, you know, brewing in the more conventional way is that you can sometimes forget and go, oh, I've overbrewed the tea. Impossible with this. In fact, you're more likely to underbrew the tea because you're pouring over too fast. And now I'm back to 70, so we're gonna bring that up again. Sorry, the button is too far away because I'm trying to put the kettle away so it doesn't make so much noise into the microphone. So while we're waiting for the water to heat up, I'm going to give you the more clear, hopefully, list of the differences between conventional and pour over. Let's start with pour over. The potential advantages or benefits of a pour over. Number one, more clarity. Less of a stewed taste that will mask the clarity of the aromatics. More aromatic profile. So you're getting a more clear, taste is the wrong word, but a more clear flavor profile or perception of the aromatics. Softer, no astringency, no bitterness. Slightly sweeter, but that's perceptive just simply on the basis that it's because it's not as complete or not, it doesn't have as many compounds in, you're picking up the sweetness a little bit more. You are getting, potentially, in my experiments, you're getting potentially more infusions out because you're sort of brewing in a more fractioned way compared to the Gong Fu style. So you're going to get potentially more infusions out of your brews. You're going to have to focus more attention on the brews, which is great because it draws you in terms of its mindfulness process. But you could say, I don't really want to have to focus so hard on brewing. So that's, again, it's just a difference. But you definitely have a lot of control. Just like with pour over coffee, you have a lot of control as to the nuanced nature of your extraction. And so if you like to geek out on I can try to get slightly more of the leaf extract and I'm going to pour in different places and I'm going to learn how to, for each tea, learn how to pour in certain places and certain styles, and you want to sort of engage that sort of disciplined way of understanding how to brew, and you want to really develop that control. If you enjoy that process, then you're going to really love this style of brewing. The advantages or the positive differences that the Gong Fu brew has, I would say you're going to get richer brews in the sense of a more complete extraction. Now, you could say you're going to get more balance, right? Because of the fact that you're extracting more compounds at the same time. But balance is more of a preference, right? Like maybe you prefer the balance of your tea to be more in the high, bright aromatics and less of the basier notes or the more kind of leaf material notes. Maybe you prefer that. So, but I would say that you are going to, by default, have a more complete extraction of this tea if you brew Gong Fu style. You're also going to increase the mouthfeel texture. You're going to really understand the leaf a lot more in terms of its mouthfeel, in terms of its texture, in terms of its finish, in terms of its physicality, in terms of its astringency, in terms of its conversion from, dryness to sweetness to vaporousness, the hui gan. All of those things are going to be enhanced, and you know how valuable or you should know how valued those aspects are to me and to a lot of tea drinkers. What else? What else is a difference in this Gong Fu style? As I said before, this style of brewing is very attention grabbing, and you can mess it up if you pour too fast or you pour incorrectly. This is less fussy. Again, depends on whether or not you think that's a good or a bad thing, but it's less fussy. There is more potential that you're going to have forgotten brews with this one compared to this one, but it is less fussy and commands a little bit less of that sort of like detailed control when you are brewing. And you're just going to get all around more likely to have consistent good brews compared with this. So you have more consistency with this style brewing. And I will also say, and we'll talk about this after we've brewed the green tea, that there are some tea types that I think don't work with this pour over method, or at least I just think are noticeably less enjoyable compared to Gong Fu. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, rinse it quickly, very quick, just so I can have a sniff of this. Beautiful roasted, toasted bean. Oh, there's nothing like fresh tea, freshly picked tea. Toasted bean, but also this bright orchid note as well. Okay, now, this time I'm going to use... no, I'm not. Because it's bigger leaf, I want to try to start to soak in the leaves. So I'm still going to go this way. I'm going to do a zigzag, and I'm going to sort of guesstimate 80 grams of water. Like I said, once you've sort of started in this process, and you could stop, you could do like, I'm just going to brew 40, you know. And that's, again, a great thing about this style of brewing is that you're not restricted by the size of the vessel. You could go higher or you could go lower. Now you could go lower and pour this halfway and fill it up halfway, but the extra air tends to mean that you don't get as good an extraction. So usually you want to fill the containers close to the limit to really not have heat escaping. But you can brew this in a half capacity way. It's just not as effective. Whereas here you can brew smaller or larger amounts of water. I'm holding it because I want it to drip. So again, I'll put it on a stand. So aromatic, so bright. Like I'm in the mountains, I'm in the fields. So soft, so sweet. I mean, I'm getting really sold on this style of brewing, and I will caveat that by saying, if I want a particular profile, and that profile is a profile of softness, sweetness, gentleness, and I don't always want that. In fact, I often want pushy, aggressive, physical. Right, now I'm going to brew the other way, and I'm going to try brewing with my left hand because I don't need to train myself to be a bit more ambidextrous. And I'm pouring in one area. It's also better for that camera maybe. And then once I get here, I'm going to just go into the middle. And let's see what kind of extraction. It's definitely less predictable than with Gong Fu. Gong Fu, like, you've got your vessel, you've got your amount of water, you've got your time. It's much more predictable. Here, it's much more fussy. So, again, a difference. The other thing that's worth noting is you can't use clay. You're doing pour over. Ooh, you could do pour over into a clay pot and then pour from the liquor from the clay pot. So you're still getting the interaction with clay. So I tell a lie, you could do that. It would be an interesting, look, this is so fascinating, right? You could go off in a million different ways, or not a million, but you could go off in many different ways with this and experiment. So I'm just sort of throwing it out there for you to play, and then let me know your thoughts. All right, let's taste the second infusion. And then I will give you my opinion about which teas this I don't think works for. Honestly, it's just so sweet. And I have tasted this exact tea, and I gave it, what did I give this tea? A 1-tick tea. This is a 1-tick tea, which means it's good, but it's not in the realm that I want to buy. But tasting it like this, it would move up to 2 ticks. But tasting it in the classical Gong Fu style, it was 1 tick. And that shows you something, because it really is singing in my mouth in terms of brightness. I'm getting like gooseberries and orchids and like melon, green melon. It's amazing. But I'm not getting roasted bean. I'm not getting that bassy toasted notes. I'll brew one more time in here while we're talking, and I'll see if I can try to get that out by really brewing in one area and seeing if I can get more of those bass notes. But you can see that I did that here. So there's going to be a more emphasis towards the brighter notes. Right, so let's talk about which teas I think this works with and doesn't work with. And I'll say from the outset that, of course, I've been playing with lots of teas, and I'm still in that process of trying to understand, them. So this is up for revision. But at this current moment, from the experiments that I've done, I think that this style of brewing works superbly well with greens, black, yellow. I've tested this with Shangpu'er, works very, very well. Even if the Shangpu'er is a little bit large leaf and straggly, if you push them in a bit and just give them a little bit of a crush, not too much, but you sort of break them up a bit, it can work amazingly well and you can get incredible results. So Shangpu'er, green teas, yellow teas, black teas, all, in my opinion, work. Tend to work better if they are smaller leaf, tend to work better if they are more delicate leaf versus more straggly leaf, but you can get really good results with more straggly leaf if you give them a little bit more of a push and a prod. It works well with green oolongs like TEAWARE that aren't too ball rolled. And you want to really extract the aromatics of the tea. It does work well. It's up for experimentation, but sometimes I feel like it's not getting enough extraction because the leaves are larger and they need more energy. So greens, yellows, blacks, green oolongs, Shangpu'er, it can work well. Dansong teas, oolong teas, medium oolong teas works amazingly. You can do incredibly, very aromatic brews as well. So it works across all of those tea types. The teas that I don't think it works well for are, you can break up in two categories. One, because they need more energy to extract. White teas that are made from buds, white teas that are made from shomei, so larger leaves, I don't think, in my experience, work that well. Now, you can play with crushing the leaves and you can maybe get some good results. But from my experiments with white teas like this one, it didn't get enough extraction out of it. Also, dark teas that need, I think, more consistent heat, and you're trying to really bring out the richness and the smoothness and those rounded notes of a tea, like Heicha, Shangpu'er, Liu Bao, etc., etc. Generally, you might find some really great small leaf Liu Baos that are very bright, that work well, but generally I think that those teas don't work so well with this method. And also Yancha, rock oolongs. I think that they just don't, that because the leaves are big and gnarly, they don't extract well. Again, experiment, play around, crush the leaf. You can do your own experiments. You can probably get some great results. But overall, I would say darker teas like Heicha and dark oolongs, roasted oolongs, and I would say very tightly ball rolled oolongs like Taiwanese oolongs in general don't work so well because, first of all, they're tightly rolled, they need more energy to open up, and once they're open, they're much bigger leaves and they don't extract very quickly, and so you're going to get overall too much of an imbalance, I think. So I think that those are the tea types that work and don't work so well from my initial experiments. If you were going to start doing this, I would start with small black, just to play around and learn this technique, and then you can move from there and try to understand more. I'm going to brew this one more time, and I'm going to try my best to brew very slowly in one area. And see if I can get more of the leaf material out. All right, let's see. Making a mess, sipping on lots of tea. I know everyone going, you're throwing away tea. But I'm surrounded by tea and I've got a lot to taste. Yeah. It's not the same. It's not as bassy, but I'm definitely picking up more of that in-leaf material, and I'm definitely getting a little bit more dryness in the mouth, but still nothing like the Gong Fu style. Play around, please, people, play around. Let me know your thoughts. Pour over tea. I think that there is a whole world of exploration, and isn't it amazing? Tea, 4,000 years old, and we're still finding new ways to express the beauty of these leaves. Let me know how your experiments go. That's it, tea heads. Check out other videos, taste our teas wherever you are in the world by browsing mayleaf.com, and come visit us if you're ever in London. Other than that, I'm Don from Mayleaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from those tea bags. Keep drinking the good stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.